Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hopefully everybody had a happy Merry Christmas. So for me, as of the filming of this video, today's actually just the 21st of December. But for me, I can't wait, to go ahead and start filming the rest of this tournament. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot ahead with the filming of these episodes and get these uploaded and scheduled for later on in the week. And that way they're already ready to go. And like I said, up and posted and scheduled. I don't know if I'm going to have a video posted Christmas Day, because I doubt anybody is going to want to watch me on Christmas. I might post something. As of the filming of this video, I don't have anything planned. I might post a video for Christmas, but as of the filming, I don't know. I was thinking about a special holiday episode for you guys, but come on. You guys want to be with your families, so if I put something out for that day, then this right here is irrelevant. But that's the one downside about posting or making videos ahead of time. You just don't know what's going to happen in the future. But like I said, I am thrilled to make these videos. I'm ecstatic. I just want to get them out so quickly. And it's a huge difference, because you guys saw those live videos I was making. I'm like, man, I was like so encumbered, man. I was like no longer interested in the tournament. Like when I was in round 2. Now round 2 was awesome. Like round 2 was like one of the most enthusiastic, because I felt like every episode was a finals or semifinals match. But I was like so disheveled because like no videos were getting any views. I'm like, man, this sucks. I'm feeling like this is some of my best work, and I didn't feel like any of the episodes were getting the notoriety. And I'm like, man, I just feel like, man, these aren't. The fans aren't interested, or the viewers aren't interested in this tournament this time around. So I may not even want to continue on this tournament, but I wanted to at least complete the second round. And by the time I got into the third round, luckily it re-inspired me, re-sparked that interest. And I'm glad I continued, because once I got into round 3, bam, I really took off. And for no other purpose, I'm glad for myself that I continued on. I kind of had to resituate this background, man. I've been watching the last couple of videos, and the camera, when I'm looking at the shelf, it looks like it's slanted. I'm like, because I've been using like these WWF magazines underneath the acrylic cases. So I got this acrylic case for my LJN, and then I got like the magazines, and I got another acrylic case on top of it. I think it was making the camera lopsided. So now I got like 3 acrylic cases, but now they're like super high up and making me look super short. But at least you got the right backdrop. So who cares about my mug, right? It's the backdrop that everybody wants to see. Round 6. There's 10 figures remaining. The last 10 LJNs of this tournament. I'm going to try and fit this into one video. 5 matchups. Normally, 4 matchups has been taking me anywhere between generally 35 to 45 minutes. I'm going to try and get this down to keep it around 40 minutes. So, but with 10 of the best figures of the entire roster that I have, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. It's probably going to be an hour-long video. I hope you guys are buckled in, because this is probably going to be a long one. I want all these guys to win. This is going to be one of the hardest decisions I made. But this is going to be telling. I think this round is really going to tell me who this winner of this tournament is going to be. It could be Bruiser Brody, could be a 3-time champion at the end of this tournament. We could see Hulk Hogan finally get his just desserts and win his first tournament. it could be someone else. We could see Boss Man win his tournament. We could finally see a new incoming a new champion from someone like the Ricky Steamboat. Finally see a resin figure win. I guess we won't know until we start going through the last few videos, right? All right, so first matchup is going to start off with a Series 1 Hulk Hogan. All right, let's get a good one. Let's get a good one. Every single matchup, I'm going to make that face because you got 10 of the best figures. Berserker, Ram Treasure's Berserker. I said if Hulk Hogan made it out of round 5, there's a good chance he was going to win this tournament. But finding out that I was wrong and there wasn't 7 rounds, or there was actually 8 rounds in this tournament, I said that he actually had to make it one more round. So if he wins this round, I think his chances of winning this tournament shoot up to about 75 to 85%. But Berserker is a freaking legend right now. I don't know. I don't like his chances, to be honest. But nostalgia is going to get me on that one. We'll find out what happens. Butch Reed. Butch Reed takes on Zeus. What is this? Dragon Steamboat. Takes on upgraded Bundy. Colonel Mustafa. This is the matchup that I dreaded. Colonel Mustafa takes on Bruiser Brody. That leaves Andre, Blue and Black from the Raider Nation, taking on Big Boss Man. I'm going to pull the figures. Get your popcorn, your coffee, your bowl of cereal, whatever it is that you need. I feel like this is going to be a really long video, guys. I'm sorry for the hour and a half video we're about to have today, but we're only looking at one video in round 6, so I'm not going to be able to choose. It's going to be tough. Coming off Christmas break, yeah, this is going to be a tough one. Bear with me, guys. Alright, guys. First matchup. Hulk Hogan Original Series 1 takes on the Berserker. If this was a regular, regular playable matchup, man, where you're a kid, you're sitting down and you're having this wrestling match, this would be so much freaking fun. I would be killed to be like 6 years old, 7, 8 years old right now, sit down and have this wrestling match. I would get so much freaking enjoyment from this. So let's start off with the basics from this particular matchup. Berserker, right off the bat, in terms of overall appearance, basically a 10 out of 10 figure. Everything from overall look, color scheme, design, perfect figure. Play pose, I mean, it's not quite your Hulk Hogan play pose. I mean, it's like a warlord type play pose, which is, still in my opinion, the Warlord has, with that pose, he still makes him a top 10 LJN original figure, right? I've always coveted the fact that when you look at the head mold of this particular figure, it is very Hasbro-esque with that head mold. So I've always appreciated that with this particular figure. I've always been absolutely crazy with the over excessiveness of the boots, right? So I look at this figure with the robe, the boots, the head, the whole Viking helmet. Berserker was a fun bad guy. Like, he would come into like Royal Rumbles one night, you would just sit there, you would root for him to be eliminated because he was such a threat, and I love that. No matter which way you slice it, at the end of the day, Hulk Hogan is always going to be a very simple and plain figure. I will love the hell out of this figure to the day I die. But you look at Hulk Hogan, you look at Greg Valentine and Andre the Giant, they will always be plain, simple figures. Andre with his plain blue trunks, blue boots. Greg with his black boots, black trunks, very plain. Okay, fine. Hogan, throw a little red in there. Get a little bit of offset color. A nice little addition. I've always said an excessively thin figure for someone. And Hulk Hogan was never fat, okay? You don't look at Hulk Hogan and be like, man, dude, you've got a gut on you. Never. At 305 pounds, I mean, he wasn't like some super thin guy or anything like that, but he was, a big muscular guy, But you don't make him like super thin. That's crazy. I like to watch the New Age Revolution a lot, and every time he brings up guys like Macho Man and Hogan, he always throws out the word iconic, and he's absolutely right. I will take that word from him in this case, and I will throw that word out as well. I will use the word iconic. It is an absolute iconic figure, because Hulk Hogan is an iconic character. He's an iconic wrestler. He is iconic of the 1980s and even into the 1990s, but I think I more like him as an image of the 80s more than anything. What helps Hogan in a tournament like this more than anything, even though he's a very simple plain figure, what helps Hulk Hogan Series 1, a very plain simple figure, in past tournaments, I've always gravitated towards the customs. Mostly because they were different, they were unique. I kind of like the upgrades. When it was original on custom, I've always gravitated towards the customs. But when it came to customs against other figures later on in the tournament, the customs would not win and move forward, because the customs really didn't have anything special about them. But the original has that special meaning. That's why you find the original figure here in round 6 of an 8-round tournament. That's why you find the original among the last 10 figures standing of a 320 figure tournament. That's why we're going back and forth between one of Random Treasure's best figures ever, and we're literally debating one of LJN's first series run. And here's the thing I always say. When you're looking at any It doesn't have to be a toy line. It could be toys, clothes. It could be, frying pans. I mean, literally any product on the planet you could think of. Usually your first run, your first release of anything is going to be, I don't want to say inferior, but there could always be upgrades to that product later on. With toys, LJ, and here's the thing, I actually disagree with that comment because I would say the LJN's first series was the best. And I would say Series 6 was second best. And, the middle series were, staggered, but generally, most of the time, your first series, they're usually trying to get their footing and see what works. Like I would look at Hasbro, I would say, okay, series 1 is the worst. Second series, second worst, and third series just really explodes with the best figures, etc. I know this is going to end up being like an hour and a half video. I really have to make a decision. I have to make a decision fast on a lot of these figures. I really can't spend 10, 15, 20 minutes on each matchup. Everything tells me that Berserker is the best figure. But my argument keeps going back to, this isn't a tournament about the best figure tournament. It's about my favorite figure tournament. And is Berserker my favorite among the two? He might be. But I think nostalgia is going to get me every time. And I think that it's going to be extremely difficult the further and further we move forward through this tournament. I'm still not ready to put Hogan down. I think the first 2 or 3 rounds was really the time to put Hogan down. And if I haven't been able to put him down since, at this point, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to allow any figure to win against Hogan. So yeah, if I had to say at this point, Hogan has to be my top selection to win this tournament. That's not to say he will win, but he's probably going to be one of my top selections if I had to guess right now. So Hulk Hogan is going to move to round 7. He is going to be among one of the last 3 standing? Last 5 standing, sorry. One last 5 standing. Berserker out after 6 rounds, making it to the last 10. I now know where this figure stands among my favorites. Ram Treasures did an amazing job with this piece. Outstanding. Next up, and oh man, here it is. Butch Reed taking on Zeus. I would argue that Zeus from Random Treasures, and I have been arguing that this is one of the single greatest LJN figures ever made. I do not care which line you're looking at. If it's LJN Originals, Grand Toys, if you're looking at the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast, Major Bendy's Big Rubber Guy figures, if you're looking at the new Latuni guys, if you're looking at any customizer, heads from Tom Begg, if you're looking at Sin Bodhi figures, if you're looking at Zashman figures, any random customizer out there, I would argue that this is one of the greatest LJN figures ever made. Bar none. One of. I mean, it's really hard to say the greatest, obviously, but definitely one of the greatest pieces. Because of the movie, because of my affection for this particular figure, and of course, I actually know the actor. Well, not personally, of course, but because I know of the actor, I should say. Seen him in multiple movies. Obviously, the Friday movie, Armed and Dangerous, No Holds Barred. You know, I've seen him in multiple movies, so very familiar with the actor. Plays a fantastic bad guy, and coming into WWF and playing off the Zeus character, very fun role. Such an awesome piece. I looked it up on eBay today, and I went back and I found the sale, and I actually bought this figure in September, and it was from a seller called Mommy V's, and I know I bought from that seller before, probably multiple times, and that's where I got this Butch Reed figure. And I think I said in the last video where I was talking about the Butch Reed figure, and I'm like, look, seeing this piece on auction, and I was in the process of doing my first round of this tournament, and I'm like, look, seeing this figure, and I'm like, man, this figure could win my tournament if it was part of it. Not even physically holding it in my hand, not even owning the figure yet, and I'm like, man, this could be a winner. That's how much this figure spoke to me. And now this piece goes up against Zeus, and I'm like, dang. I want that Zeus figure to win my favorite LJN tournament. This is his time to shine. Because if I go ahead and I go through that video that I plan on making where I talk about retiring LJN figures that have won previous tournaments, Zeus is a Random Treasures tournament winner. If I retire that figure because he's won a sort of tournament, right? If I retire the Bobby Heenan Elf figure because Bobby Heenan Elf has won a My Favorite Manager tournament, guess what? Those figures will never participate in another tournament again because they won a sort of tournament. They may not have won a My Favorite LJN tournament, but they're still tournament winners. I love this figure a lot because it not only gives you that WCW Galoob Butch Reed, same figure, same pose, right? But it gives you that natural Butch Reed. It gives you that upgraded color scheme. It gives you a lot of not only color and detail, but with the addition of the accessory with the vest built on and the elbow pads, just so much. It's a flashy figure that pops at you. Now, I didn't watch Butch Reed. I honestly didn't know anything about Butch Reed. He's one of those characters that I only learned about. Same thing with like Barry Windham, for example. I only learned about these guys right as I started collecting the Galoob figures. So I would say probably a good chunk of people that I start collecting or I learn about is during my collecting stages of my life. May not know anything about the character or the real life person, but their figures mean a lot to me. And what was done to this figure is absolutely remarkable. No Holds Barred is an incredible movie. My favorite wrestling movie ever. Tiny Lister, I know him as an actor. The glossy finish, the play pose, the look of the figure, having won a previous tournament, knowing that everything about this figure really pops. Everything with the accessory and the belt and the colors and detail, even the pose, and the way that the muscles, everything that pops with this figure, everything meshes beautifully. See, this is a good match in the sense that this is literally like I don't know. This is like putting like the 1927 Yankees against the 2016 Cubs. This is like great pitching staff against great pitching staff, great offense against great offense. And yes, even the 2016 Cubs had a freaking killer offense, man. Yeah, the Yankees may have had, I don't know who they have, Ruth, and I think maybe Mantle and Gehrig maybe were on that team, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But um, Cubs, when they actually had dynamic team with Rizzo and Baez and Bryant, outstanding, very comparable. I mean, none of them were putting up 50-plus home runs, but, I mean, they were legitimate offensive threats, right? These are both 10 out of 10 figures. I really want Zeus to win this tournament. I'm going to go with Butch Reed to win. I think the Butch Reed pose and the Hogan pose mesh well enough to I think the Butch Reed and Hogan, with the pose wise, they match up well enough where that's going to be a very tough choice to choose a winner. But at the same time, if I would have gone with Zeus, imagine a Hogan versus Zeus match. But here's the thing, man. If I feel like I would probably have to rekindle a 1989 No Holds Barred, and I would probably choose Hogan just because of the whole No Holds Barred thing, and that wouldn't be fair to Zeus. He would lose by default essentially, even if I thought Zeus was a better figure. And I also kind of feel like fans out there would kill me if I chose Zeus over Hogan. So, I think it's kind of important that I don't have, and there's no guarantee that, in a random drawing that a Zeus squares off against Hogan in the next round. But, why chance it, right? I really wanted Zeus. This is one of those figures I wanted in the last three. I definitely wanted this one to go at the least one more round. And back-to-back Ram Treasure eliminations. This one hurt. This one hurt a lot. But I really like this figure a lot. And Butch Reed is going to move on to round 7. All right. Next battle is upgraded Bundy taking on Ricky Steamboat. So, one of the things I've talked about with King Kong Bundy, and I was watching that video probably last night, and one of the things that I said in my video that really spoke to me was how when I hold this figure, it makes me smile. It really brings a lot of happiness to hold this figure and to see the pose, and it brings joy. And they're not a lot of figures. I mean, I love all of these freaking figures, man. Like they're all happiness for me. But this one is different. This one really sparks a lot of happiness for me. So, in essence, would that make this my favorite LJN? Now, imagine this figure loses this matchup. Would I go back and absolutely regret the decision to not have this one win my tournament, because that would make no sense. That the one figure that, in essence, in my own words, is absolutely perfect in every way, to not win this tournament. It sparks absolute happiness. It brings great joy. It's a beloved character. It has great name recognition. It has a perfect play pose. This is his look, so I really can't complain about color and design and all that. So, again, we talk about grip, which has a fantastic grip. Very playable, right? Good weight and all that to it. It's someone who, as a bad guy, even if you're not using it as a bad guy against, any of the other, faces or good guys, you want to tag team him with any other bad guy, or have him have bad matches against other bad guys, you could do that. Put him in a Royal Rumble and have him, in there for long terms. This is such a useful figure for so many different avenues. You want to use him as a long tenured tag team champion? Great. Because of his serviceability, it is such a fun, useful figure. Imagine this particular figure as a kid and the enjoyment you would get from it. This is, in my estimation, one of the most perfect LJNs ever made. And it is a shame that people have to legitimately customize a figure to make it to make it the right way, when you have these multi-million-dollar corporations, and then you got companies like Hasbro and Mattel, etc. And they put out, sometimes they put out stuff the right way. They put out good stuff, and then they put out crap. I don't know how rich LJN was back in the 80s. I assume it was a multi-million-dollar corporation. Was it a multi-billion-dollar corporation? Probably not. Mattel is definitely a billion-dollar corporation. Is Hasbro a billion-dollar corporation? I think so. Was it a billion-dollar corporation in the 90s? Probably. Bandai? Was Bandai a billion-dollar corporation? Maybe. I mean, I know in the 90s they had like Power Rangers and stuff, so, and that was like probably the greatest selling toy line ever. So, but I just don't like when these toy companies act like they never were kids before and they don't know how kids can use action figures. I mean, that's just crazy. King Kong Bundy is a rubber figure. Point one. What hurts, what I've been talking about throughout this tournament, and what hurts a resin figure, is that he's essentially a statue. You will not use a Ricky Steamboat figure as a playable figure. But what I also argue on both spectrums, one, you will not argue that he's a playable figure, but at the same time, you will also argue that it doesn't bother you that it's not a playable figure because he's essentially a statue. So the play pose really doesn't matter. Because he's a legitimate statue as a resin figure, play pose is irrelevant. And like I said, it's not like he cost a fortune. You're not paying $150 for a figure like this. I think this cost me $40, $40 or $50. So I'm gonna say like 40 purchase price maybe. So I mean, hell of a damn price for this. And it's kind of like he's flying a little bit, and he's got the wings expanded, and the wings are movable, so I like that a lot with the cape, and it's just fantastic. And Ricky jump on like the top of the ropes, and he kind of blow the fire out, kind of like the little fire breathers at the circus and stuff. And it's just a great looking aesthetic figure. And those kids who had Galoob as when they were young, and they had Tom Zank, they look at this figure and they look at the Tom Zank type pose. A lot of people out there, they love the Tom Zank figure. They were, maybe because they were Tom Zank fans, and they think that Tom Zank was a great, aesthetic, playable figure. I'm not a fan of the Tom Zank pose. I think it's a subpar figure, but I didn't have Tom Zank as a kid, and I didn't know of Tom Zank growing up. That's another one of those characters I learned about only as an adult collector. But everything about this figure, take away the resin, play pose, again, I'm not even worried about play pose. Take away the resin, it is a perfect figure. Aesthetically, head mold is fantastic. It is another 100% duplicate of your Hasbro figure, which looks amazing. I can't say 100% duplicate because Hasbro has the fused legs, right? But beautiful design, everything, and even like the little lizard scales on the pants, everything they did with this figure, even like the abs of the figure is done so well. This is a fantastic piece. Am I logically going to be able to give a resin statue the opportunity to win a tournament like this? I really want to say that a playable wrestling figure is really should be the only choice to win a tournament like this. But LJN or LJN style, that's the thing, style. That's why I incorporate customs. Because I want all types of LJN-ish figures to be a part of the tournament. So it doesn't have to be necessarily original, and style, yes, even resin. Damn it. This is so freaking tough, man. I love the Bundy figure. I think in another world, King Kong Bundy would win this tournament. But I think even from the very get-go that Ricky Steamboat was always destined to go as far in this tournament as humanly possible. I am going to go with Ricky Steamboat to move to the end. And this one hurts a lot. This one hurts. I will still make the argument. I will probably always make the argument that this is probably one of the greatest LJN figures ever made. And I will stand by that always. But this is, I mean, look, there are no flaws to this figure. Ricky Steamboat moves on to round 7. Next matchup. Oh God. Colonel Mustafa versus Bruiser Brody. I think we know what's going to happen here. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. What time we at? We're at almost 40 minutes. Yeah, guys, this is going to be an hour-long video. Maybe even more than an hour. I'm going to spend a long time on this. Because this is going to be an impossible choice. Bruiser Brody. Bruiser Brody is a two-time champion of the My Favorite LJN Tournament. Regardless of what happens in this tournament or any other future tournament, whether or not I decide that I will retire this figure, which seems like a strong possibility, I really thought about after the first tournament, you know what? He's won the first tournament. Let me go ahead and make a second tournament. Let me not include him. He's won the first one. Let me give an opportunity to a different figure for an opportunity to win. But I said no. I want to keep him in there because I want the opportunity for every figure that I own to be showcased. He won the second tournament. I made a third tournament. Here we are. I'm like, okay, you know what? He's a two-time champion. Let me keep him off the roster. 319 figures, uneven number. But it wasn't even about that. It wasn't the fact that it was uneven. It was more the fact that same argument. I wanted the opportunity to showcase every figure that I have. And I think it's unfair for me to keep a figure off just because he was a previous winner. Just because he's won previous tournaments doesn't mean he's going to win this one. I could have a different figure win this tournament. I could come back next year, not acquire any new figures. Make this exact same tournament, have the exact same figures, and he could win that one. So things do change. So things that I've always loved about this figure. One thing on a personal note, because it came from my buddy Eric, Wrestling Butter, it was at one point the most expensive figure I ever purchased. Now I look back at this, I'm like, the money I paid on this is like mediocre compared to what I paid on some other items. But yeah, and at the time I'm like, yeah, I was willing to pay more because it was for a friend, and B, I was working overseas, so I mean I did have that extra income, so that really helped a lot. To kind of reading, he used to put little descriptions in his eBay, kind of talking about the characters and stuff, and I used to like that a lot. So I learned a whole lot more about his character and whatnot. Plus, he mentioned it was like a sort of prototype from like Zashman and whatnot, and I'm like, hey, I get to own an original prototype. I'm like, that's awesome. And I looked at it, I'm like, okay, it's like a Greg Valentine type figure, and Greg Valentine I had listed as like my number 5 all-time favorite LJN, and absolutely loved the play pose. I mean, amazing. Some of the things I liked about it, I mean, the head sculpt was absolute fantastic. I mean, it's still kind of cartoony. I mean, it's not like 3D printed, right? Where you look at it and it's like, human-like, like somebody took an actual photograph of somebody, but it's cartoony enough to the point where it bleeds in with like 1980s technology, where you look at it and you're like, okay, this could be an actual 1980s figure. So in some regards, you kind of want to see modern day technology. In some regards, you're like, you know what? I'd rather have something where you look at it and it kind of feels like it came out way back when. And so I like that aspect where it kind of looks like it was a 1980s release. With the built-on vest, beautiful. Okay, beautiful. And the muscle tone on the arms were fantastic. The chest was so-and-so. And I've always said the boots. The boots were one of my favorite aspects of the figure. Kind of like a cowhide or something. And Bruiser Brody, he was a family man and whatnot. And, he was wrestling in Puerto Rico, and the promoters in Puerto Rico, the owners of the the wrestling promotion in Puerto Rico, they wanted to make him part owner, and one of the wrestlers there, he was also part owner. They wanted to share the proceeds and whatnot. Got pissed off. Coward decided he wanted to, stab his ass while this man was in the shower. Like, what kind of coward does that? I think I was watching Jammer's channel one day, and he mentioned in one of his magazine reviews, he was looking through his magazines, and he said something about, who was it? Who was it Murdoch or something? They were beefing, and they kind of made a comment, same thing about somebody being stabbed or something, and then not too long after, how Bruiser Brody, got stabbed in real life. It was kind of like a little bit like a real life prediction type of deal. And I'm like, damn, that's messed up. That's brutal. But yeah, for the time that this man's bleeding out to death in the freaking locker room, it's getting into the doctor and everything. I mean, they took their sweet ass freaking time too. But Berserker John Nord, he actually took on the whole Viking and the whole Huff thing, moniker and all that stuff, kind of in reference to Bruiser Brody, as they were tag team partners way back when. So after Bruiser Brody died, that was kind of in memoriam and in reference to him and whatnot. So I mean, I really like that aspect as well. So I mean, that was pretty awesome. I didn't watch Bruiser Brody, obviously, growing up. I didn't know anything about him, not until early 2020s, and not until I got this figure, kind of learned about his character and whatnot. But he was a pretty special character. So this figure, for a long time, the backstories and the history, the figure itself, the person I bought it from, all that history, it meant a lot. The piece still means the world, and holding it in my hand and talking about it, it still means the world. Damn. Bruiser Brody's going to win this tournament again. I think I might as well just stop the tournament right here, because kind of talking about this figure, looking it over, man, I just don't see a way where Bruiser Brody doesn't win. The figure does hold special meaning. All right, Colonel Mustafa. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of history or anything with the Colonel Mustafa figure. Because, one of the first things, obviously, I am a play pose first guy, right? And Bruiser Brody has that Greg Valentine pose. Awesome. One of the best play poses. One of the top 3, top 5 best play poses of the LJN line. And with Iron Sheik, in my opinion, one of the top 5, top 10 worst play poses of all of LJN. Very unplayable, unserviceable figure. And that sucks. Because everything else about this figure is basically perfection. In the 1990s, during the height of the Gulf War, obviously, I don't remember if I knew that this character, I don't know if I knew him by Colonel Mustafa or not. Obviously, Colonel Mustafa, I knew him later on during the collection, and I think when I bought the figure, it was called Colonel Mustafa, and I think that's probably when I started realizing that name. Actually, no. I mean, I got a tag team set with him and Sergeant Slaughter, kind of like in this getup, right? And I think that's where I got when I finally learned the name Colonel Mustafa. I don't remember, because I don't remember the names, obviously, from childhood, but I remember him tagging with with Sergeant Slaughter during the Turncoat era. So I mean, I remember the look and everything, kind of like Nickel and Dime. I remember the look, but I never remember the name from childhood. I mean, that was such a long time ago, and I was still relatively young to the point where I wasn't old enough to actually remember all of those names. A lot of those people were very forgettable for the most part. But the Adnan Al-Kassi, who was or General Adnan Al-Kassi, who was from the AWA, and he was manager of Sergeant Slaughter and Colonel Mustafa, Iron Sheik in WWF. And later on, when Sergeant Slaughter turned back to All American Sergeant Slaughter and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, it was awesome watching them whoop his ass. And of course, my tags just went flying. I really love this friggin' look, man. Hearing the stories, and it's funny, man. I that's why I love watching some of these shorts or these shoot videos on like YouTube and whatnot. I mean, I can't sit there and watch like a whole hour long interview or anything like that, but you watch like these 5-minute videos, 10, 15-minute videos, hearing like Greg Valentine talk or like Bad News Brown or something like that. And like talk about like Iron Sheik and like Jim Duggan getting high together in a car. And it's like, oh yeah, bad guys and good guys aren't supposed to be riding in cars together, like kayfabe, you're supposed to be hating each other and yada yada yada. And how they got fired, I'm like, stupid. It's the same story you hear with like the Rockers getting in a bar fight and getting fired like the first day they got hired by the WWF. And of course they got rehired like a year later and became like the mega superstars that they were as a tag team. But yeah, I mean, Iron Sheik, I mean, he had like a lot of drug problems, I guess, but the man lived to be like, what, 81, 82? And he just died. What was it, 2023? Did he die? 2022? No, I think he died in 2023. So, I mean, he lived to be over 80 years old. I mean, that is a long, tenured life. And that was amazing. I mean, I love that because most wrestlers die young. They live to be like in their 30s, early 40s. So, when you hear like guys like Kamala live to be the 70, 70, and Iron Sheik like 81, I think he was. It's nice that you get a long, full life. I really like this figure a lot. I really love this figure, guys. I know Bruiser Brody's my champion. And I've said it a million times. One of my biggest arguments about this tournament is what happens if I come across a figure that might be better than Bruiser Brody? Or what if there's a figure that I think I enjoy better than Bruiser Brody? But I'm so used to Bruiser Brody winning my tournaments that I just would not have the strength to put another figure over. That might happen with something like Hulk Hogan, for example. I might enjoy another figure more, but that nostalgia for Hogan, I might not be able to pass him up. I love that Bruiser Brody figure. And just holding him in my hand, talking about him, that feelings about that figure, I don't know if I could necessarily put another figure over him anymore. But I look at this figure, everything that was done on this piece is so immaculate. And Mark Hackenberg, who does a lot of my customs, and the last couple of figures that were in the last round, the King Kong Bundy with the t-shirt, as well as the Nickel and Dime figure. He responded to one of my videos, epoxy. That's the word that I couldn't remember. So you take a LJN figure, you apply epoxy, and you're able to create like shirts and pants and accessories, stuff like that. So, but look at this, man. a regular, ordinary, run-of-the-mill, everyday Iron Sheik figure. You add on this epoxy, right? The detail that went into making this Iron Sheik or Colonel Mustafa figure. Everything from putting the buttons, right? And the creases of the shirt, the way that the sleeves are rolled up, the belt and the pants and the pants, I mean, every intricate detail. When I talk about like Ram Treasure, I look at like the Hawk figure and I'm like, the way that like when he like when he like poses and you see the intricate detail in the muscles in the back of them in the back of the shoulders, right? I look at that detail and I look at a figure like this and or like their Abdul the Butcher, and you kind of look at like the fat rolls, or you look at like the pants and you look at like how the pants ride up into like the butt and everything, and the creases and all that. I love that attention to detail on those figures. And I look at this, there's just so much effort and detail that went into. They literally look like they took a real life human being and shrunk him to about 8-inch size. No, he doesn't have accessories, theoretically. But again, if you want to say, well, his cord or his beret, that is technically his accessories, if you want. They're built on, but they're still accessories. Got it. But the ribbons and the medals on his chest, everything about this figure speaks perfection. He is a rubber figure, so he is a playable action figure if you want. I mean, he's still movable. Unlike the Ricky Steamboat figure, where as a resin piece, you look at him as a statue. So if you don't like the pose, you're not focusing on pose because he's resin. He's simply a statue. So pose is kind of like, you don't even think about it. As a rubber piece, you still got to take pose into consideration. Bruiser Brody is one of the most amazing pieces I have ever collected. One of the downsides I've been talking about for many rounds now is I've been kind of losing, I don't want to say interest, but I've been losing a little bit of value of my respective Bruiser Brody, is because, yeah, it's sort of a prototype, but there are other Bruiser Brody figures like this, and it just doesn't seem as special anymore. And more importantly, there are other people customizing their own Bruiser Brody type, where they take a legitimate Greg Valentine figure and they cut off the head and they slap on a Hillbilly Jim head, and that just devalues. I don't know why, but it kind of makes me feel like it devalues this figure of sorts. You're taking a real Bruiser Brody figure, you're doing that, and it takes away. It just devalues my piece to an extent. God help me. I'm ready to make a decision, guys. I think it's coming. All right. For the first time in 3 tournaments, Bruiser Brody is not moving on to the next round. Colonel Mustafa We'll be moving on to round 7. God dang. That was absolutely heartbreaking. Colonel Mustafa, round 7. That leaves Big Boss Man taking on Andre the Giant. And guys, we're already over an hour. This one, even if it wasn't past an hour, this one is a relatively easy selection. You guys already know it doesn't matter which Andre the Giant, any custom Andre the Giant, any original Andre the Giant. All of my Andres have a legitimate chance to make it as far in this tournament as humanly possible. The thing is, none of them would really win the tournament. Meaning, they could be one of the last 5 standing. Hell, they could even be part of the last 3 standing in this tournament. But with guys like Bruiser Brody in this tournament, with Big Boss Man, and even Hulk Hogan, Kamala, Stud, customs like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and Colonel Mustafa, there are just so many great figures as part of this tournament. This has got to be one of the best Andre the Giant figures ever made. And like I said, this is a legitimate figure that could make it to the last 5, even last 3 with the right competition. But with all those amazing pieces, an Andre figure just could not win this matchup. There's just not enough color and detail. And Andre, based on what he wore throughout his career, it just wouldn't happen. Big Boss Man, however, Big Boss Man on the mic was such a fantastic talker. I love listening to that guy. And in the ring, I mean, he was such a force, such an enjoyable wrestler. Even when he was getting beat up and being tore by like nails, for example. I mean, he was such a performer and such a talent, such an actor. And like I said, wrestling is part acting in essence. And his action figure, he is one of my top 10 favorite wrestlers of all time. His action figure is absolute perfection. Height, width, weight, fighting pose, aesthetics, color scheme, that color that just pops out at you, accessory, everything that you're looking for in an action figure, perfection. I said one day if I ever had to sell off my whole collection, which would absolutely destroy me, but the one thing that would stay with me forever, my AFA graded Big Boss Man LJN. That mint uncard AFA Big Boss Man LJN, the centerpiece of my collection. That I have ever said, if I ever had to own one MOC LJN figure, Big Boss Man was always that piece. I didn't care about any other LJN. I just wanted that one. And I knew it was going to be like one of the most expensive figures ever. But, man, that was such... And I actually bought a second one, not too long after that. And I sold it. And I had actually bought a number of Black Card series in like one bundle. And I sold them, and I'm disappointed I did. I should have actually held on to them. I don't even remember if I even turned a profit on those figures. I assume I did, but selling them on eBay, taking a huge loss in selling fees, I regret doing that. Big Boss Man's going to win this matchup, guys, but for Andre to be one of the last 10 standing, from the Raider Nation, Kenny Lester, who is the artist, the customizer, amazing work on this. I am so glad I picked this one up. The head sculpt just beautifully fits in with this respective figure. So good. Big Boss Man, one of the last 5 standing. So, here are your semifinalists, and it is so odd so very odd to not see Bruiser Brody not in the semifinals. Your 5 semifinalists. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care, everybody.